Hello, you're listening to The Future of Media Explained with me, Press Gazette Editor-in-Chief, Dominic Ponsford. And for this week's episode, it's entitled Optimising Programmatic Ads, What Publishers Need to Know. And it's sponsored by Assertive Yield. Joining me on the Press Gazette podcast so far is the Chief Operating Officer of Assertive Yield, Sherzod Rizayev.
Hi, Dominic.
It's great to have you on. So listen, programmatic advertising. So we're going to get into it. I'm ashamed to say, despite covering this business for more years than I would care to admit to, I still get a little bit, have to sort of wrap a cold towel around my head when people start talking about the ins and outs of programmatic advertising. So I'd appreciate it if you can sort of explain the technical bits in kind of words that a kind of small child would understand. And what we're going to try and get into in this podcast is just to understand some of the challenges around all this area, understand a little bit better how it works, the technical aspects of it, but I think more importantly, understand what publishers can do better. And just to sort of set the scene, if you will. So advertising supported journalism since the steam age, right? Since it became an industrialized process, it is the thing which has made journalism affordable. So when it was newspapers, you could afford to buy them. They were very inexpensive because there were loads of ads there. In the online age, it's supported a lot of really good journalism. And I'm thinking it reached a high watermark in the sort of 2000s, late 2000s, maybe a bit further on, when people like BuzzFeed News, Business Insider, Courts actually invested quite a lot in heavy-hitting journalism supported by advertising. Is that fair? Is that sort of roughly correct?
In programmatic advertising, yes. So obviously advertising has been around, as you mentioned, quite some time, but things moving into more of a digital way and inventory being available in real time to the buyers, making real-time decisions based on algorithms and platforms and systems. Yeah, this sounds about right.
So there was a time really when if you were, say, Business Insider, you were recruiting journalists, creating page views and getting money back from it. And it was almost in a virtuous cycle, wasn't it? You could sort of expand quite a bit to have quite a big newsroom that was funded by that programmatic advertising. And I think it's fair to say that in the last few years, that's become a more challenging space. So as I understand it, programmatic advertising and online display advertising is a big segment. It's growing quickly. Online display advertising in the UK alone was worth £17 billion last year, according to the Advertising Association, up 15% year on year. But sadly, that 17 billion, or not even, a small proportion of that is going to publishers. And if you look at Reach PLC and other publishers that come out with public accounts, they're working pretty hard to stay still as far as their ad revenue goes, their program advertising revenue goes, or they might be growing a bit. So they're not getting anything like 15%. Is that sort of roughly fair?
When you mention publicly traded companies and their sort of stats and things, as a sort of COO at Assertive Yield, I try to sort of refrain myself from mentioning those numbers. But if you look at the economics of the brands spending money and all the way to the end user where they come in to read the publications and articles and they consume their sort of news, or be it just reading about their sort of favorite topics and stuff like this. There are loads of hoops that money jumps, and every time that money jumps, there is either on the buy side or sell side. There are data providers, there are infrastructure providers, there are decision-making tools and so on and so forth. Takes a little bit of that, pound or dollar spent, and by the time it reaches to the publisher, it's not the same amount it's left brands' pockets. So for sure, there's starting from agencies and planning all the way to end user, there are a lot of cuts being made in the middle.
So I think at this point it's probably good to just explain that a little bit about how it works. So the technology-wise, you've got publishers who are producing websites. They're the sell side, of the programmatic advertising technology. You've got ad exchanges, which sit in the middle, which are running real-time auctions to dictate the price of those display advertising on publisher websites. And then you've got the advertisers and brands who are using a different set of technology to buy ads. And like you say, there's between that sell side, the middle, the exchanges in the middle, and the advertisers on the buy side, there's like a whole smorgasbord of technology. There's a lot of Google tech, isn't there? But there's a lot of other tech as well, isn't there?
Yes. So the whole ecosystem, if you come from a publisher side, yes, publishers are the one actually creating the content and bring the users onto their sort of platforms to read, and then advertise, putting in ads in front of them to fund those publishers to be able to do that. Now, sell side, then when they bring the users and creating those ad spaces, they send it to something called SSPs, sell side platforms. Then SSPs or exchanges that you mentioned then connect to the buy side, which are called maybe DSPs or other sort of networks and trading desks and agencies. Then they connect that sort of what they're looking for, who they're looking for, and then an SSP bringing those audiences together, and then those real-time auctions take place. And this is how the ad scan then gets delivered to the end user on when they're reading their content or consuming their content from that page.
And where does
that is a very, very layman's terms of putting that sort of chain together.
Yeah, well, I'm still following, so we're in good shape. And where does assertive yield sit in that world?
Good question. Assertive yield that we do pretty straightforward. We offer very straightforward but very incredibly powerful kind of tool to publishers. What we offer is end-to-end revenue management platform. So we bring together or unify your revenue data, your yield optimization tools, your sort of traffic information, and your reporting in one place, and aggregate all of these things and normalize all of this data together and give it to the publisher in real time. That's one of the things that as we do, and based on that kind of aggregated information data and bringing the tools, optimize your inventory, then we offer publishers to be able to kind of act in real time to the change that is happening or how the markets are behaving and so on.
So you sort of get a clearer view of what the journalism you're producing is worth commercially, in a sense.
Yes. So our revenue attribution tool is one of the most powerful one, and we can give the data in real time. When I say real time, literally about 10 seconds behind. The publishers can see exact revenue being generated against each article, each ad unit, or any sort of commercial real estate that you have on your page. Then that will give the publishers the visibility into what's going on their pages commercially. But on top of that, we are also overlaying data about user experience and their sort of their traffic experience, their bounce rates, their kind of the new user versus the old user data, the revenue per user per session, and things like that. So it's kind of a holistic view for a publisher to look at.
So I guess sort of zooming out a bit, what are the sort of things that publishers can do to make sure they make a bit more money from programmatic advertising? Because I guess one of the frustrations that I think some probably feel about this world is that it feels like it's a bit out of your hands. And I know people complain bitterly about the way the market is set up, but it feels like there's all these tech companies that are controlling our destiny as publishers, really dictating how much what we do is worth. And you can imagine how you can feel a bit helpless in the face of all that. But I'm sure you would argue there are things publishers can do to get a better sort of return and hopefully to ensure that that quality journalism is supportable on the open web, because at the end of the day that is the thing which keeps the the lights on for democracy, isn't it? So what are some of the things that publishers can do?
You're absolutely right. There are macro forces that outside of publishers' hand, but sometimes publishers also underestimate how much they can influence and how much they can actually impact in those environments. For example, one of the most powerful tools that we offer, and it's being talked about a lot, is traffic shaping. Traffic shaping is one of the tools that gives the publisher the upper hand, if you like, or the control to send the right inventory to the right SSPs and through the right demand channels based on the performance, based on the data that the buy side is willing to bid and buy. So you don't have to kind of send all your inventory all the time to everybody trying to sort of catch everything under the sun, but you're actually really, really targeting those buy side decisions or sending it to the right channels, and you're being very strategic about it as well. So they see only then hop over on the sell side and they only see the inventory they're interested in from you. Like instead of seeing millions and millions and billions of inventory in any given time from publishers, they only see the inventory they can bid and they can buy. So that kind of enhances your relationship with the SSPs, with the buyers, right? The second thing that publishers can actually impact is real-time kind of dynamic flooring. Before the auction or the ad unit hits the auctions, the AI sort of model-based dynamic flooring can actually set a price to the user, to the ad opportunity, to that particular moment. And the publishers sort of being able to push the demand by just doing that. And even the heavy hitters like AdX, Google AdX, have to then bid slightly higher. And it gives the publisher an opportunity to increase the value of that ad opportunity or ad impression without inserting extra ad on the page, without inserting extra sort of real estate or taking away more real estate from the content to increase their revenues. It is a very powerful tool that publishers can utilize. And another thing that it's a really hot topic in the industry right now is taking the auctions to the server side. Server side auctions is really a game changer, and it's giving publishers the opportunity to run as many auctions as you want on the server side without interrupting the browser. And it's really happening away from your browser and giving the user, the end user, the opportunity to not spend a lot of data or waiting a lot of time to see the right ad or the right content. And also what we're seeing with our solution is that without changing any layouts, without changing any demand sources, the publishers are achieving 15 to 20% extra revenue or increased revenue from the same demand sources. How it's being achieved? That on the server side, real time applying those traffic shaping, dynamic flooring, and clever kind of ways of routing the inventory to the right SSPs is being done really, really quick and really efficient way. So that way that the publishers can achieve higher revenues. Definitely going back to the point, definitely you cannot change the entire ecosystem, but you can influence and you can control the way that you actually operate within the ecosystem.
The big thing which comes up when we talk about challenges for publishers on ad revenue, every conference we've done in certainly the last year, 2 years, it's like brand safety. So this idea, which is incredibly frustrating for publishers, that say you're, the Times or someone who's writing, powerful journalism about stuff that's going on in Gaza or what have you, and you've got this incredibly, affluent and influential and great audience who's reading it. Brands, don't want to. A lot of brands don't want to appear next to it because of this brand safety idea, the idea that you might be contaminated in some way, But is this one sort of potential solution to that? Making more money from your audience, or is brand safety still a whole nother challenge?
I would say brand safety has been a challenge for some time now, and when the first ideas came out, the words like shoot was a word that the brands completely didn't want to appear against it, but you use that word a lot in sports content, in football, and stuff like that, which could be absolutely brilliant, very clean environment and whatnot. But then news organizations, they have to report on what's going on out there, and whether it's the incidents that are happening, murder or killing or whatever that is, versus the wars happening and stuff like that. And yes, brands do not want to be associated directly, or they don't want to be showing baby food against a news that is about some sort of a bad incident or bad something happening around babies and mothers and stuff like that. So that is absolutely true. It's a whole new big topic, but slightly twist to it is that there is not much ways left, and every commercial real estate is given away by publishers to achieve their revenue goals anyways. So the only way to be able to earn more money is acting on it smartly, having your data in real time rather than acting on a days or weeks later, and being able to be reactive on real time is something that publishers can do right now. So I don't see any other way of making more money. Adding more partners, adding more SSPs, adding more technologies only creates more siloed or
More complexity.
more siloed way of sort of looking at things doesn't help the publishers, unfortunately.
So what are the other big trends for the next year that you think publishers need to be aware of and get in front of when it comes to sort of maximizing their ad revenue and their programmatic ad revenue?
So the trends wise, I think number one thing is the first party data, and how the publishers, with the third party cookies disappearing, how publishers are taking advantage of what they have on their users, and the consent platforms, or utilizing clean rooms to be able to kind of match the buyer IDs with their sort of the user information that they have in more legal and right way, and being able to extract extra value of that for their sort of advertising dollars or pounds.
And just to, because we were talking about this before, and before we started, and probably the average person might not appreciate the extent to which knowledge of people is key to advertise, isn't it? So I think you were saying that with billboards now, there is programmatic billboards which will change what they're showing based on who's nearby. And I was thinking, God, that sounds incredibly creepy. But then of course, there's all sorts of data about me, where I am. I've got Google Maps. I've got all sorts of apps which I've enabled information sharing on. Yeah. And I guess there's a whole market in that information being made public. So sort of publishers need to get in front of that, don't they? And ensure that, because they've got an incredible relationship with readers, haven't they? But if they don't know who the readers are, then it's going to be difficult to, sell meaningful amounts of money for the advertising.
Location-based advertising has been around, but it's getting and evolving day by day, and it's getting more. I wouldn't say complicated, but it's getting definitely more sophisticated. And digital out of home, CTV, versus sort of online digital advertising, display advertising, it is sophisticated, and it is more to do with the finding you the right audience for the right brands, and in real time. It all boils down to having the real time holistic data in front of you, right? So be it digital billboards and knowing who's around, who would be potentially looking at the your brand on that billboard is being shown, or the user reading your content on your website, knowing in real time and how they're behaving it, and so on and so forth. It's all about kind of having the right data and being able to act on it. Publishers definitely have to be in front of it. And if we bring it back to our conversation out from digital out of home to websites, it's no longer nice to have knowing exactly how much revenue you're earning in real time from what commercial channels, and how is it impacting your user experience, and whether adding extra demand partner giving you a little bump on your revenues but then impacting your bounce rates or loyalty or the engagement of your user. So having all of this holistic sort of view in front of you is must have moving forward, and the publishers who are taking advantage of that is the ones that are actually operating and taking advantage of that $17 billion of ad spend and increasing their sort of revenues year by year.
And on that first party data point, it's worth mentioning, isn't it, that cookies are still around, so and publishers are much more forthright now in terms of saying most UK publishers now will say, accept cookies, tracker cookies, or pay some money not to be tracked, but we're not going to do this stuff for free anymore. So but then I guess it's worth mentioning, isn't it, that cookies only get you so far because lots of browsers don't support them. It's only Chrome, isn't it? So if you're on Safari, you're not necessarily going to.
So you don't have the cookie data on Safari. You're right. On Chrome and Android, and that's where the brand ad spends are also, you can see very clear differences on, like not being able to target the user spending, let's say, X amount, and being able to target the user with third-party cookies and your interest and all the other things comes with it, is spending Y amount, which is always higher than the X. The consent platforms, the users are kind of agreeing to be targeted by advertisers are, in my opinion, is great and it's good. But at the same time, being a publisher myself for many, many years and offering our sort of optimization tools to publishers now, I think being relevant to the content as well as to the user is always a good thing. And you don't want to be seen an advertising that is completely not relevant to you. You want to see something that is going on, and promotion is going on, and you are in the market to buy a car, and which car brands are doing what kind of promotions, and then they're trying to get in front of you with the way that they do sort of cookie targeting and or any other means of targeting, I think is always good for the industry. But cookie deprecation and other means of advertisers being able to utilize their first-party data is definitely something that the publishers need to keep an eye on and have a strategy on how they can utilize those first-party data that they have.
So have you got any good examples of sort of publishers who are doing well, or publishers who are adopting good strategies when it comes to advertising?
We can definitely certainly talk about our sort of publishers who are utilizing our tools, taking advantage of be it traffic shaping or server-side auctions or dynamic flooring that we offer with our machine learning algorithms and real-time impacts of those things. The publishers who are taking advantage of all of those things together with the holistic data being in front of them is definitely achieving double-digit increase in their revenues or plus.
A final question, Shehzad. So we did a case study this week on Press Cassette. We interviewed the founder of a big culture title in the UK called Far Out magazine, which I don't know if you've got more than a passing interest in sort of classic rock, it'll pop up in your Discover feed the whole time because they're always doing stuff about Led Zeppelin or Lost Interview with David Bowie or something. But they're an interesting title, and they've got about 30 staff. They do 20 million page views a month, entirely ad funded. But you talk to them, it's like it's hard work, and I think they're always sort of worried about what's around the corner, in terms of, or publishers like that are worried about what's around the corner in terms of how are we going to keep this sort of programmatic advertising coming? How can we plan for the future? How can we build? So, I mean, what are your sort of general bits of advice for publishers who are, really relying on programmatic advertising revenue to continue to invest in journalism, to continue to do what they're doing? What are the sort of general things they should bear in mind over the next few years?
First, I would say get control of your data. And without unified real-time view of your revenue operations, you are flying blind. And that makes optimization almost impossible just first and foremost, make sure that you control what information you have on your revenue operations. Secondly, I would say invest in intelligence and tools like traffic shaping, AI, dynamic flooring, server-side optimizations. As I said earlier, they're not nice to haves. They are almost essential for surviving 2026 and beyond. And then third, I would say future-proof your tech stack, whether it's in-house built or you work with third parties or likes of sort of yields. As I said earlier, we offer complete revenue management platforms just to make sure that the technologies are built or the infrastructure that you're building in-house is built to evolve. This industry moves really, really fast, and agility is the key. And I'm genuinely optimistic and where we're heading as a sort of publishing industry. We are moving from more of a guesswork and patchwork to a world where publishers can operate with more certainty and precision and confidence. That gives the publishers the confidence of knowing exactly what they're publishing and how much money they're earning and where and how, who's buying, when they're buying, and what price they're buying, how they can impact that kind of decisions smartly and in more real time. It is very interesting times, and also makes me very optimistic.
I like that note of optimism, Shehzad. We need that. We need that on Press Gazette. I said it was my final question, but you just on that optimistic note, it has got me thinking about one of my bugbears, which is the growing gap between kind of professional content online and sort of low quality, increasingly AI generated sort of slop, which is at the other end. But yeah, do you sort of feel confident that sort of we're going to find better ways to get better value for the professional content as regards to the kind of low quality sort of made for advertising stuff we see?
From my experiences, like this MFA content did get a significant hit already, and quality journalism, the trust, transparency, and the value that the brands are looking for is definitely out there, and the brands are looking for that kind of environments. And I'm sure that the quality journalism, quality content, and the value exchange between the brands and those publishers, as long as that exists and as long as that kind of trust between them doesn't disappear, the ad-funded content generation by quality journalism still will exist for long term. But AI generation and the content is made for advertising, and websites are purely just came up out of nowhere, no history, but being able to kind of drive millions of users to that content definitely exist. And I think brands are slowly kind of pulling their spend from that kind of environment. There's a big movement against that kind of content. But the value exchange, wherever that happens, and the trust and transparency have to exist for whether you are a publisher with a very long history and you have a very, very quality journalism or not, has to exist. If it doesn't exist, and if it starts breaking, then those sort of ad spend dollars or pounds will not flow to your websites.
Yeah. So if you're a professional publisher, don't be tempted to go down the low road.
So it's keep the. I would say they keep the quality content creation up, but remember AI and this fast-moving decision-making on advertising exists on the buy side too. So the buy side is always been more sophisticated, more smarter in targeting than what the sell side kind of offers. What we talked about, what the sell side can do, only give the inventory that is relevant to the buy side, apply real-time value to it with the dynamic flooring and offer that to the buy side to make a decision on it, or take it to the server side and make a clever auction, bidding mechanisms happen, then these two, when they match together, and sell side also have like upper hand, if not upper hand, and more of a sort of equal say in this value exchange, in this kind of buying and selling of the inventory, then if you're doing all of these things right, and you're on top of it with the data that you have in real time, it definitely something that publishers can go on longer. And I don't want to use survive, but I'm more of a lack of a better word for that at the moment.
Thrive.
That's
We'll take that.
Yes, it's a thrive. The publishers can definitely thrive in that kind of exchange.
Well, look, thanks very much for all that. Sherzod Rizayev, Chief Operating Officer, Assertive Yield. It's been great to help us all to learn a bit about programmatic advertising, latest trends in it. It's a complicated world. You've lifted some of the gloom around it for me, and I think, like you said, and like so much in publishing, agility is you can't stay still. You've got to keep moving. Thanks very much for coming on. You've been listening to The Future of Media Explained with me, Press Gazette Editor-in-Chief Dominic Ponto. And this week's episode was sponsored by Assertive Yield. If you check out the Press Gazette website, we've got lots more on programmatic advertising and all the other themes impacting modern news publishing. Best way to keep up with all our content is to sign up for our daily newsletter. Thanks very much for listening.